Togo Hisada has emerged as the man to beat in the early season, though Nieva and Joko are giving the young Japanese driver a run for his money in the standings. Will Hisada be able to take another victory at his home race, or will reigning champion Seb Tixier come through to get his title defense back on track? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 3 of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legends series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Maurice Gardner, and with me in the booth is Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director, Robert O'Brien, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. We're racing at Motegi for the third round of 2023 Season 2, a very different track to those that this car raced on in the real world. Let's learn more about this ultra-modern Japanese venue.
Welcome to Twin Ring Motegi. This well-known Japanese racing facility located roughly 2 hours north of Tokyo gets its name from the fact that it has both an oval and a road course that can be run. But a unique feature of this track is that instead of having a roval layout, the road course is entirely separate from the oval circuit. On top of that, drivers have 3 different road courses to choose from in the form of the Grand Prix, East, and West circuits. While not totally devoid of elevation change, the track is relatively flat. What distinguishes the place the most is the combination of plenty of long straights heading into heavy braking zones. With it being built in 1996, it has most of the qualities you'd expect from a modern road course, including flat curbs, a fair amount of runoff, and multiple pit complexes. Oddly, because of the oval, the track includes night lighting for a portion of the road circuit. Though there isn't much notable about most of the turns, one of the more distinctive corners is the final chicane on the Grand Prix course. Leading out of a tunnel that returns you to the oval infield, it's kinked on entry and it tightens greatly at the second apex. This makes pushing the limits of this corner extremely tough, and it often catches drivers out. Though international series such as IndyCar and MotoGP have held rounds at the track, today it is mainly used for local open wheel and GT series. Still, the one-of-a-kind experience offered to drivers and fans at this circuit is sure to keep people coming back for years to come.
Circuit here at Motegi, Joey. Built by Honda in the late 90s and mostly famous for motorcycle racing, though the American Open Wheel Series has raced here in the real world on a couple of occasions. A very technical circuit, plenty of hairpins, plenty of overtaking opportunities, but it's all about traction.
I think you said it best. It's a very technical circuit. Lots of late apexes. You gotta be careful of not overstepping the limit here, and 14 turns in Motegi, Japan, just under 3 miles in total length. You mentioned it, the hairpins, turns 1, turns 3, most importantly 9 and 10 way down there, that hairpin that you're seeing, and watch the cars as they're trying to come off of the corners, that power down exit. Got to be careful not to roast those rear tires with how much horsepower they have, because when you overheat the tires, it tends to last a few corners here.
Yeah, well over 400 horsepower in these Ford-Cosworth DFV V8 engines, and of course very light cars with no downforce and treaded tires. This is how the standings look in the F1 category. Togo Hisada taking victory last round at Mid-Ohio. He is P1 in the standings, but Sebastian Tixier actually quite close to him at the moment. Same can be said for Ove Trengerade as well as Benjamin Shoko. This is quite close here at the top. And I think, judging by these, only after round 3, this is going to be a very competitive season in the top category.
It always is, and we also have the F2 drivers out here, which is only separated by iRating. And right now, Tomas Tuba leads the way. Terry Traumhauser right there as well. Look at how close these points are really in the entire top 10 of this F2. Bjorn Ackerman, Mats Linden, Kurt Clapper right there inside the top 5. And as we do more races this season, it'll definitely start to develop a little bit more.
Yeah, they certainly will. We've also got the Nations Cup as a part of the Grand Prix Legends series, and, well, Togo Hisada definitely repping Japan very well, but Finland trailing very closely. Singapore, largely represented by Sebastian Tixier, that is where he resides. Norway and Australia right in there as well, the typical nations that we see up the top of the GPL standings. Well, we'll take a look at the race details here for tonight. It is a single race of 19 laps here tonight, with open setups, of course. You don't get a spare car, so you have to keep it nice and clean. And in any case, if you have too heavy contact in these Lotus 49s, you are out of the race. They're very fragile machines. Typical official racing rules here on iRacing. You get a drive-through penalty at 17 incidents and disqualified at 25 incidents. And off-tracks can be easy to pick up here. The curbs are very thin, and there's grass right beyond them. So once again, drivers have to take good care around here, and it's a very smooth circuit as well, Joey. It's definitely a far cry from the kinds of tracks that were typical in the 1960s.
Yes, you're right. The curbs are pretty low. No real big bumps out here. I can only think maybe going underneath the bridge in the final few corners, maybe there's a little bit of sudden elevation change, but no, a very smooth Japanese circuit. And honestly, I would love to drive this place. It looks like a ton of fun to drive. However, with the big brake zones and these narrow little cars with minimal downforce, the drivers are going to have their hands full every single lap here today.
Yeah, you'd think that you get a lot of time to rest on these straights, but the amount of throttle control required in these cars out of the corners, the amount that you rely on solely mechanical grip in these things, especially through this last couple of corners that we're seeing a driver go through right now. It's so difficult there for Terry Trommeshauser for, trying to get a lap down and get them good run onto the start-finish stretch. Well, no surprise to see that Togo Hisada is the pace setter at the moment, 1 minute 50.4 in qualifying. And, this young Japanese driver still has yet to turn 20 years of age. In fact, last time I was on comms for Grand Prix Legends, he won at Brands Hatch. That was last year, and he was 17 at the time. So very interesting to see the kind of pace that Togo has in these machines.
He's always one of the fastest, and I think that he's really stepped it up this season even more. There's been a few of these really good drivers come through this Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legends series, and actually on screen right now, one of the classic greats, Mick Claridge, who just stole away that provisional pole from Togo Hisada. But talking about Togo, he's got incredible pace, and I was mentioning, I think he's stepped it up even more. He's a serious player for race wins every single round here for this season.
Yeah, he's been quite the consistent driver in the first couple of rounds of the season. But Mick Claridge, of course, as you said, one of the all-time greats of the Grand Prix Legends series. He's been here from pretty much the outset, and he's fed us some very good information about what it's like for the drivers out there. He did say that it's very challenging to get the power down out of these slow corners, and if you spin up the wheels a little too much, then that'll overheat the rear tires, and you will carry that for a few corners at least. So that's another thing that the drivers have to take into account here. Through the left-hand hairpin he goes, and there is that little bit of sliding that he was talking about. Got to be so careful out of the corners. And look at Hisada. Wow, into the 1 minute 49s, and, well, with only 2 laps available to qualify with, I think Claridge is going to have to pick up the pace here.
Yeah, Togo definitely just threw one down, the only car in the 149s right now. However, Mick Claridge is tracking about 0.2 faster than his previous lap. He's only got a few more turns here underneath the bridge through this really tricky technical kind of rinky-dink last couple corners here at Motegi. We were talking about a pre-race, very tricky, especially when you put multiple cars in there.
Across the line, Claridge comes, and it is going to be a 1 minute 50.0. So, very close gap there, only 0.04 of a second between our top two, and everyone else is a long way behind, about 0.5 or thereabouts. What can Marco Salgado do? 1 minute 51.4, did not go faster than his first lap. So it looks like with only a minute left in this session, there's not going to be too many other drivers setting times, but Ove Trengerade is out there, and Ove is another quick driver in these cars. Has definitely taken quite a few wins in this series in the past. Don't know if he'll be able to really make an impression on the top, though.
I agree. Ove is one of the regular front runners here, and sitting all the way back in 20th place right here. I'm not even sure if he's going to have time to finish this lap here, Reese. And this is a very unusual spot for the number 10 car.
Yeah, quite unusual. 1 minute 52.3. That's over 2 seconds off the pace set by Togo Hisada. But this being an, he might not be able to finish this lap. And even if he could, I think that's the lap ruin there with that huge power slide and the left-hand hairpin. So 8 minutes of qualifying is over, and we'll go straight into the race session from here. It will be headed up by Togo Hisada and Mick Claridge on the front row. 5/10 clear of Richard Watson and Mikko Leino in third and fourth. The third row is our reigning champion Sebastian Tixier and longtime series competitor John Olsen. Antti Lepisto and Bill Tyler on row 4. Top 10 rounded out by Gary Ho and Marco Salgado.
Here in the 11th place position, we got Xavier Sanchez, followed up with Laust Olsen, Glenn Becker there in 13th, Ben Zocco 14th, David Rossi inside the top 15, Matthew Maudsley, Bjorn Ackerman, Steve Morris, Jeff Saunders, and Ove Trengrade in 20th.
Matt Linden starts car 30 out of 21st place. He's headed up with Michael Grissinger there. Gary Quellen and Robert Plumley on the 12th row with Will Lamb and Tobias Harenby in 25th and 26th. Terry Trommershauser and Jan Stefan are going to line up on the 14th row, and top 30 rounded out by Andrew Eng and Timothy Porter. Final couple of drivers. Jonathan Jordan is the last driver to set a qualifying time. Jason and Kurt Clapper, along with Robert Reynolds and David Buell, are going to take up our 35 Lotus 49s, ready to take the start here at Motegi. I don't even think 35 Lotus 49s exist in the real world. A very rare car indeed, but this is going to be quite an interesting one with only 30 seconds left to the green flag.
Well, there might not be that many in the real world, and let me tell you, we're about to crash a few here in just the first couple laps. Air temp and track temp look nice and pleasant.
Yeah, pretty warm track there, and I think that's a reasonable temperature to go for. It does look like we are getting ready to go green. We are away for the Grand Prix Legends, and that was a pretty good jump there from Mikko Leino out of third place. Really got the start down perfect, but Mick Claridge up the inside of Togo Hisada in turns 1 and 2. Will be trying to claim the race lead from here, get slightly better traction on the exit, but Hisada is still alongside in car number 4. Will he be able to get the move done at the third corner? He will indeed, but he spins from the lead. Togo Hisada around, and it looks like we've had a couple of other drivers have problems there as well. Looks like car number 16, Richard Watson, going for a spin too.
Yeah, and it just causes the entire field to take avoiding action, whether that's through the inside grass, outside gravel, and what a disaster start for Togo Hisada. Just got too deep on the brakes. We're going to catch this replay here, and Reese, cold tires, too deep, and just around it goes.
Yeah, the rear end just snapped on him, taking the tight line through the corner, and we see that the number 16 car also spinning in sympathy there. Good to see, though, that the Grand Prix Legends field very familiar with incident avoidance. They all managed to get around him without sustaining damage, though some will have incident points. Well, how does it look here from the overhead shot?
He just loses the back end. You know, he just goes in a little narrow. He tries to lean on the right rear, and it's just not there yet.
Oh, for the number 16 of Richard Watson, it was contact actually that spun him around there with car number 6, John Olsen. So, a little bit of drama there on the first lap, indeed, and it only took us a couple of turns to get that done. But we come to the end of the first lap now, and oh dear, Sebastian Tixier off as well, reigning champion. And that's in the final sector of the circuit. So plenty of drivers that we expected to be competing up the pointy end having problems, but not for Mick Claridge and Nicoleno. They are 1 and 2, only separated by a few tenths.
Yeah, good racing out front. And to touch on that Sebastian Tixier incident, I think he just got in too deep going down the hill. And you mentioned it, our previous champion now having to dig himself out of a hole. 16th place, way back there with Ove Traingrade. At least he's got a familiar buddy to work through the field with.
Yeah, but working through the field will be difficult here. It is a circuit that should be conducive to passing with lots of heavy braking zones, but you've got to manage the tyres here. That is priority number one. And look at this, a little bit of an issue for, I believe that was car number 2, or car number 68. Or Tixier, sorry. My apologies, mishearing a couple of things in the background. Traction, once again, definitely the order of the day here. If you don't have it, you're absolutely nowhere.
And this is just a big scrum, and it's all about putting the power down, coming out of those exits. We really are glorified drag racing drivers here in road racing. It's all about getting the top speed as much as we can down the straightaways. And right now, Ove Traingrade actually has got a pretty good run on Steve Morris. Is going to look ahead down the inside here. Not a big braking zone. You see Morris really close the door going in on entry. If Ove can get a good run out of the hairpin, this might be a better opportunity.
Well, he definitely does have the run and caught a little Whisperer slipstream on the way down the straight as well. Gets up the inside into the fourth last corner here, and it looks like a bit of further trouble potentially for Maurice, with Tixier now trying to round him up. Had a slight look in the braking zone and is taking a narrower line there into the last couple corners, forces him wide. This could be an over-under from Sebastian Tixier here. Get on the throttle a little bit better, straighter exit, and there we go, up through the gears and across the start-finish line. Sebastian Tixier will take that position back, moves himself back up to 16th spot.
Yeah, really textbook over-under from our previous champion, and now he's got a little bit of room to run as you see Ove Traingrade hunting down the next competitor as well. I think Xavier Sanchez is next on the list, up at 14th.
Yeah, Xavier Sanchez, he's trying his best here, but he's right in the midst of a battle. You can see them up ahead. That looks pretty messy. Gary Quellen having to defend there with Björn Ackerman up ahead and running a little bit wide on the exit of the hairpin. This is a proper fight between these cars as they go through the 130R corner, and it's just a slight lift, half throttle through that corner and drift it through, Mick Claridge says. No flat out running through that turn in these machines. Let's see if anyone goes for a move here. Oh, that's a bit of a look from Xavier Sanchez, but not able to get it done. Gary Quellen, though, a little bit compromised on the outside line. Still, Sanchez cannot find a way through.
This really is a good scrap, and here comes Ove Traingrade making up another spot, going by Glenn Becker right there. Now he's on the back of Xavier Sanchez as Sanchez gets a really good run on Quellen in the slipstream. Now is headed downhill, probably into the best passing opportunity to have what it takes on the brakes. No, not this time.
Yeah, I think doing the wise thing and just backing out of the maneuver. There'll be other opportunities further down the line, but we're already at the end of lap 3 of 19, so not much time to get moves done if you feel you need to. On board with Traingrade as he follows these two, Sanchez and Quellen will be costing each other a bit of time here. Got to take it easy. Defensive again from Gary Quellen into the first corner, and this really gives you a sense of how difficult those first two turns are. You've got to keep it tight to the inside, but sometimes a late apex is better. Regardless, it's really difficult to pick your turn-in point.
Not only the turn-in point, but being able to carry the right amount of minimum rolling speed through there, because that could really set off your acceleration, and it's all about hitting it right. And 3 and 4 just as technical. Get to have maybe just a little bit of a break with just a simple right-hand 90 here in turn 5, but coming up to even more technical stuff through 130R and just trying to stay as close as you can to these competitors in front of you.
Yeah, Look at how much curb they're using in that part of the circuit as well. They're trying to make the corner as short as possible. At this point, it does seem like Gary Quellen is a bit of a cork in the bottle. We're seeing that view ahead from Mick Claridge. These guys are still catching up to Bjorn Ackerman as well. But have a look behind him. Well, Ove Trengerade, Glenn Becker, and Sebastian Tixier are still right with all of these guys. Let's see then what Tixier can do. He's almost trying to line up a move here on the number 23 of Glenn Becker, and he gets it done up the inside, just manages to pull it up for the apex.
Really good move from Sebastian Tixier back up on it right now. And I'm really curious because Gary Quellen's doing an excellent job keeping Sanchez, Trengrade, and Tixier behind him, but how long is it going to last?
Oh, not very long there for Gary Quellen and Bjorn Ackerman. They had it coming together in the corner there, and they've all lost positions, but Ackerman is trying to fight it here versus the number 23 of Glenn Becker. Gets the acceleration around the outside of the final corner and gets it done on the way to the start-finish line. That basically leaves Tixier and Trengerade to try and get by Sanchez, who now has damage to his nose cone.
A little bit of damage, and hopefully it doesn't affect him too much out there, but here comes Trengrade trying to be defensive going into this turn 3 complex. These front three, or I shouldn't say front three runners, really 10th, 11th place, 13th. They all are similar pace. I'm curious to see them if they work together at all or if they continue to scrap.
Ackerman losing places behind as Tixier piles the pressure on Trengerade. And, well, now it's Sanchez's turn to be the cork in the bottle. These guys have an absolute ocean of a gap to Gary Ho up ahead, who's put the number 13 in 10th place so far. Quite a few drivers having issues in the early stages of this race, but now they need to focus on getting into a rhythm. There goes Trengerade. He sees the move, and Tixier just manages to pull it up behind Sanchez. Trengerade gets the move done and gets up into 11th. Already 9 spots gained for Trengerade. His qualifying pace was not indicative of his race pace, as Tixier, that seems to be his favorite overtaking spot right there.
Tixier seems to be very confident on the brakes and going into the corners for sure. And now that Trengrade and Tixier are clear of Sanchez, see what pace they got. And I'm really curious if Sebastian Tixier is faster than Ove Trengrade. Ove just had a terrible qualifying effort, but these two have marched through a couple packs so far together.
Oh, there's been lots of drama for Togo Hisada, and I'm not usually one to request replays, but I think this might be very significant for our championship leader. Contact with car 22 of Robert Plumley, who spun up ahead of him, and that resulted in a massive smash. This was coming out of the S's and into this hairpin. Check it out. Robert Plumley loses the rear coming into this left-hander, and he's sprawled across the racetrack. Togo Hisada has nowhere to go.
Yeah, and you see Togo really trying to duck to the inside, trying to avoid the spinning 22, and just barely gets clipped in that right rear. Unfortunate for our points leader.
Yeah, he's retired from the race now. Unfortunately, we have lost Togo Hisada. That is huge. But fortunately, it's only 8 of your 12 weeks in a season that counts. So Hisada will be able to come back with from that. Let's go back to our leaders then. Mick Claridge still leading from Mikko Leno. And, well, the pressure is certainly on. They've been doing very well up the front, haven't they? They've gotten an amazing gap over everyone else, especially with the chaos that has erupted in these opening laps.
I've been trying
already
to
with their first bit of traffic. Ooh. David
that was
Buell.
Close, definitely there, Reese. And I've been trying to keep my eye on the lead battle. It stayed kind of like this, but Mikko Leno is not allowing Mick Claridge to run away with this at all. He's kept it about a half a second behind Mick, and trust me, that's plenty of pressure to stay on your game out front.
Yeah, the gap has been kept incredibly consistent, hasn't it? Claridge, I think, is just driving at 90% at the moment. He did talk to us before the race of how easy it is to spin up the rears here. I think he's just trying to preserve those rear tires, keep them nice and cool so that he can fight back and attack when he needs to. For now, though, just managing the pace. And it seems he is looking slightly quicker as well, because Leno losing a bit out of turn 4 there.
Yeah, and Mick has won a lot of races for a reason. You know, he knows the cars very well. He knows the strategy game very well, and he knows how to handle a competitor behind him. And you're right, he does look very comfortable, but Mikko's doing a great job doing what he needs to do to keep the pressure on.
Yeah, and that could pay dividends for him later on. These races aren't particularly long, but they're not particularly short either. So, still plenty that you can do to put pressure on a rival and force them into a mistake over a long run. Both of them, it seems, had slight issues there out of the left-hand hairpin and through the right-hander. It seems McClarridge went a little deep, but he transferred that into a late apex, which resulted in a good run down this straight. The gap between the top two now sits at just over, or just under, a second, and that will not be good news for Mikko Leno. Wondering if he's been driving that thing a little past its limits now and is starting to lose some pace.
Battle on track, and a few laps ago Antti Lepisto actually got by Bill Tyler. Hasn't been able to run away, but this is a train of about 5 or 6 cars. Starts at Antti Lepisto in 4th, goes all the way down to Richard Watson in 9th place here.
Yeah, pretty good train here. Tyler, Olsen, Salgado, Maudsley and Watson all lining up here. Remember, Richard Watson is the driver who started in 3rd place and was also the second spinner on the first lap here. Laust Olsen, of course, one of the drivers who joins us on Zoom every time for the Grand Prix Legends series, and he is piling the pressure on Bill Tyler at the moment. Olsen also gaining a lot of positions here. He's up 6 spots now.
Yeah, up 6 positions. Really good run from Laust Olsen. I think it's just been consistency his game out here, and you see just riding in the tire tracks of Bill Tyler in front of him, getting closer every lap.
Yeah, the challenge is getting past, of course, and this series of, well, this single S-bend, I should say, is a place where you can gain a lot of time, but rarely is a pass actually made into there. So Olsen, I think, just hanging back a little bit, waiting for the right opportunity to strike. See how smooth he is on the wheel. Of course, a little bit of opposite lock, but you do need to slide these cars a tiny bit to get the best out of them. It's all going to be about the traction out of this hairpin, though, and oh, that's a little bit of a wiggle there from Olsen, and he has ended up losing some ground to Tyler from that. Fortunately, it seems he's safe behind, because Salgado is about half a second back.
I've always been taught loose is fast. If you don't have to turn the wheel too much, you're going to be going fast to freeze up the car, but you got to manage it. Can't get it too loose out there, and what these cars struggle with here at this racetrack is more the power down, keeping the wheels from spinning on the back end as you apply that throttle.
Oh, I think there's just been a problem for Mikko Leno. He has lost a lot of time to McClarridge. You saw him get the fastest lap just then, but he's overcooked it into the first corner. That is a very weird issue I've just seen there for Mikko Leno. He hit the apex of turn 1 and just snapped.
You know, I wonder if he grabbed the wrong gear, Reese. I'm seeing the same thing, and you're right, it just snapped, or maybe he had the rears locked on a downshift. It's very reminiscent of a missed gear exchange.
Yeah, look at that. It was just sideways instantly. Probably maybe not enough of a throttle blip on the final downshift, and the rears locked up, and it just spun him around. Well, that is the fight for the lead over for the time being. Mikko Leno now 5.5 seconds behind Mick Claridge, and it looks like John Olsen is starting to reel him in a little bit. Remember that Olsen does have a bit of damage to his front nose cone, though, so Leno might be able to pull away from here if he keeps his tires cool.
Well, and just looking at the data that's been presented to us this race, you're right, Mikko Leno shouldn't have any issue as long as he clears that memory out of his head. Just put your focus back forward, focus on the rest of the race you got.
Plenty more that these drivers will be focusing on at the moment. Ove Trengerade who's continuing his steady march up through the field, up to 11th spot now, and potentially knocking on the door of the top 10 with Gary Ho just ahead of him. And he'll be right on this long train that goes from Bill Tyler all the way back to Matthew Maudsley. So still a lot of potential here for Ove Trengerade to make up some spots. And you see the delta down in the bottom right. He is just gaining down the straights. It doesn't look like much, at once, but I mean, from 1.2 seconds back to just a second on the exit of turn 1, that is pretty substantial.
Well, and to put that into reference, he's got Sebastian Tixier behind him. And remember, Sebastian started 5th in this race, a top 5 front-running car. He's pulled away from Sebastian Tixier. So Ove Trengrade had a bad qualifying, tons of speed out there. He's got his visor down. He's making up the ground that he needs to.
Looks like also Laust Olsen has finally made his way past Bill Tyler and up into the top 5 as well. Looking at lap times, Trengerade was the fastest car on the last lap with 1 minute 50.42. Tell you what, Gary Ho was a 1 minute 51.42. So Trengerade is gaining and gaining on this whole pack ahead of him. These guys all running in the 1 minute 51s, 1 minute 52s. So Trengerade will be right in the midst of this battle very soon.
He's going to be coming up on the back of Gary Ho, and Gary actually runs a little wide. He's going to provide a slipstream to Ove Trengrade, and as long as he is able to go deep on the brakes, going to get by another competitor. Actually looks like Gary Ho's just going to go ahead and let him right on by.
Oh, good exchange there between Richard Watson and Marco Salgado, just behind those two. Looks like Salgado's having to lift off there just to gear himself up for another potential maneuver here. But Watson making up the place on that lap, moves himself up into 7th spot. So let's check back in with Trengerade. He has actually been repassed by Sebastian Tixier, interestingly. Tixier has decided to make himself a factor in this fight, and looks like Gary Ho has got triple pressure on him there in the background.
Well, Reese, just as
Ho!
Yeah, he just went off himself. Gary makes a mistake. That opens up the door for all 3 of these runners, Tixier, Trengrade, and Sanchez. But I was going to say, Gary Ho let Ove by, and then Ove took it too deep on the brakes, went off the track himself, and that's how Tixier got by.
Yeah, righto. So a little bit of sportsmanship turns into a bit of compromise for a couple of drivers. Well, Gary Ho manages to get back going nicely, but back in lucky 13th position and with no one to battle ahead or behind. It'll just be a case of trying to keep it clean to the end from this point. But Tixier versus Trengerade. For Sebastian, he almost lost the rear on the way to the corner there, but Trengerade lunging for the inside apex, even getting a bit of understeer on potentially. See who gets the best exit here onto the back straight, as it were. Looks like both of them having slight issues getting the power down as they go up through the gears. Slight slipstream might be all that Ove Trengerade needs. No, looks like experience wins the day there. Trengerade just waiting for another opportunity. Tixier's already made a couple of mistakes in this race. It's entirely possible he could make another.
Yeah, and we haven't mentioned it too much. Only, a handful of laps remaining here, and I think that if any of the drivers have abused their tires throughout the race, they stay pretty consistent, but now is when the cars are going to start to fall off through here to the end of the race.
Yeah, we're now getting into the final third or so of this 19-lap race, and the tires will definitely be past their best at the moment, the amount of sliding that's been going on, and these things are treaded bias ply tires, so and they were often built to last multiple Grand Prix distances, but the amount the drivers are pushing, oh dear, that was a bit of traffic there in the form of David Buell, who's just trying to survive at the moment, has gone 2 laps down with that 32-degree track temperature, and I guess the smoothness of the track surface. It's very easy to slide these things around.
Well, and especially if you put too much heat into them, it's difficult to get that overheating characteristic out of the tire. And trust me, if you just continue to abuse it, it doesn't get better at all. You definitely have to manage the tires, as Sebastian Tixier looks like he's trying to have to manage a little bit of lap traffic right now in front of him.
That's actually for position there. Matthew Maudsley in car 19. These guys have still caught right back up to this battle on the very edge of the top 10 here. So Maudsley has to look behind. He'll be looking in his mirrors because there goes Tixier with the outbraking maneuver. Assertive move up the inside for the number 2. Maudsley gives him room, and Trengerade might be able to find a way through here as well. Maudsley has to go defensive, though, into the final corner, and that compromises Ove Trengerade just a little bit. Tixier will be wanting to rush away from this fight as much as possible.
But Ove gets a really good run out of the final corner. Going to give himself an opportunity to take it deep into turn 1. He shows the nose. Not quite as confident on the brakes as we see Sebastian Tixier, though. The number 2 car is really good on the brakes.
Yeah, it's actually been incredible seeing the amount of outbraking maneuvers Tixier has pulled off as Trengerade gets up the inside of Maudsley there in turn 3. Looks like the opportunity is open for Xavier Sanchez to get up the inside too. Maudsley now outside the top 10 thanks to that. Yeah, you can even see it in the attitude of the cars. I mean, I'm looking at someone like Trengerade, for example, and when the nose pitches down under brakes, Trengerade's is nice and smooth, a little bit more gradual. Tixier, the nose is right down as soon as he gets to the braking marker.
Yeah, and that could be difference in the shock settings. This is an open setup series, so each one of these drivers has tweaked and tuned that setup how they like it, and definitely whatever Sebastian Tixier is doing on the brakes, it works for him and his driving style.
Yeah, of course, these cars prefer, a slightly more softly sprung setup than the Formula One cars of today. This car is from 1967, the last Formula One season before the introduction of aerodynamic wings. So this was really the apex of race car technology before aerodynamics came into play. And open wheel racing, and oh dear, that's not good there. For Ove Trengerade on the exit, Robert Reynolds slow and letting those cars by, going another lap down. That means that Trengerade has lost a bit of time to Tixier here, who's now lining up a move on Marco Salgado. Great run out of the final corner and into the braking zone for turn 1. Another thing that you see Tixier doing is he's aiming for the apex really early compared to everyone else. He's just trying to give himself as much of a margin as possible to get the move done.
Well, and you're right, he's aiming at the apex, and I think why he's doing that is because it gives the car a straight trajectory. He's not loading up the tires. Oh, has a huge moment, though. Almost lost the car himself. But I think what it's doing is it provides a straight trajectory for the car to brake, and that way it doesn't get loose on him at all.
Yeah, and that might be helped with, considering how incredibly confident he is on the brakes. He might be running the brake bias a little further back than some other drivers are. I mean, you see it there. You saw the rear end kick out just a little bit as he made his way into the S's. He's focusing on that thing getting turn in, and running a brake bias a little further to the rear is the way to do that.
Well, I think the other thing that we're just forgetting about is Sebastian Tixier is very confident behind the wheel. He's comfortable with the yaw angles that he's got in this car, and you're right, just look at how much that nose settles as soon as he hits the brakes.
It looks like a very softly sprung front end, which makes sense for a track like this. There are a couple of fast corners, but it's mostly slow hairpins. So you need a car with a soft front end, maybe less of an anti-roll bar setting, less stiff springs as well, to try and get as much rotation as possible, as much mechanical grip as possible at the front.
Marco's not letting him go, and a little deep in that final corner for Marco Salgado. Going to open up the door for Trengerade behind him. See if Ove takes it deep on the brakes. It hasn't been his forte yet, but this time side by side into one, he is going to claim that position coming out of 2.
There we go. Ove Trengerade now into 9th place. He is the driver with the second most positions gained here, as up the inside goes Javier Sanchez on Marco Salgado. I'll tell you what, Sanchez is doing quite well on this particular recovery drive. He's back into, actually +1 now from where he started. Considering the damage he's got to the front of that thing, he's looking pretty good. But the most positions gained in the field is Jason Clapper right now, up 15 spots in 17th place.
I always like watching Jason Clapper. We have to check in on him every now and then because he never puts down a qualifying time. He always starts from the back and is a big gainer out there, and doing it again today.
Yeah, doing quite well in car number 18 at the moment. Started 32nd. One of those 4 drivers to not set a qualifying time. Have a look at this fight as well. It's now a 4-way battle continuing here with Tixier and Trengarade leading. And we'll see what Salgado can do to try to come back against Sanchez behind these guys. It will be difficult, though. We've only got a few laps left in the race. And I think pointing out earlier, Joey, that the tyres being past their best, some moves might not end up very nicely for either driver involved.
No, you never want to overstep the limit, and then when the limit is closer than it ever has been before, it is easier to overstep. And you're actually seeing a lot of these cars start to wag the tail a lot more on corner exits, and I think that's just what we're seeing is the tire wear plus the fuel load is really burning off.
Yeah, of course, these cars would be fueled pretty lightly for only a 19-lap race around Twin Ring Motegi. Checking a bit further up, this is the battle for 6th once more. Laust Olsen chasing down Richard Watson. Remember, Watson started in 3rd place, and he's been trying to gain something back here, but it's been a little bit unsuccessful. Bill Tyler gaining 3 spots from 8th up to 5th. This is going to be one battle that we'll see decided in these final few laps, which driver will come out on top.
Well, and Laust was actually up in that 5th place position just a lap ago. Went too deep into turn number 3 and lost those 2 positions to Bill Tyler and Richard Watson. So Laust Olsen trying to recover himself.
Yeah, Olsen qualifying in that 12th spot. And he's been making good time through the field. And he's just been making those moves very calmly, I've seen. He hasn't been really setting the world on fire, but it's still been a really good drive here from the Scandinavian.
Yeah, and even more so, coming out of the hairpin, these cars are starting to wiggle further and further down the straightaways. And I think we're just seeing the gear shifts and then having to be a little ginger on those rear tires. Try to keep this car in line.
And it seems that despite the tyres going off and the car getting more nervous, Mick Claridge is now in his optimum range, just setting the fastest lap there, 1 minute 50.28 at the front of the field. It's only about a tenth faster than Mikko Leino is running, but that 6-second gap means that there's nothing anyone can do behind to take victory from this point on, unless, of course, something awful happens to Claridge, which I wouldn't wish.
No, you never want to see that happen, and you're right. When Mikko Leino had that problem, it really just kind of opened the door for Mick to put it on cruise control out front, and he's a competitor. He might be on cruise control, but he set the fastest lap of the race, a 150.284 last time around, so he's definitely still got the hammer down.
He's only going to have 2 laps to go when he crosses the line next. It's been a dominant performance from Mick Claridge so far. Let's see if he can hold on towards the end. The fight still continues for 5th place. Meanwhile, looks like Tyler is trying his best to keep the rear end in check. But there's not much that Richard Watson can do to pass him at the moment. I do see that Sebastian Tixier is caught up to Laust Olsen, though, and goes for the move at the inside of the hairpin. But Olsen is holding on to it amazingly. Probably the first big resistance that Tixier has come up on for quite some time.
Well, and he's going to take another look down here and think better of it. And look at how quickly Ove Trengrade, although big lockup going in there, is able to catch this battle with these two fighting. And Tixier, only with a couple laps left, I think has his sights set on a few more positions.
Yeah, a few more positions indeed on the cards for Ove Trengrade. But it'll all depend on how this battle between Laust Olsen and Sebastian Tixier runs. There goes Trengrade back to the fastest lap, and Tixier up the inside of Olsen at the second phase of the first couple of corners. But again, Olsen better on the outside line through a corner. Gives him the inside for the next turn. Will he run too deep? Looks like he has. Off into the gravel, and both Tixier and Trengrade go by. It looks like we'll see Sanchez make his way past the number 12 as well.
I don't think Sebastian was close enough, but that was the exact same mistake that Laust made earlier, just a handful of laps ago, taking it too deep into turn 3, and it bites him again. This time, Tixier and Ove up another position.
Yeah, it's been a good recovery for Sebastian Tixier. Remember that he had his off in the opening laps. Well, he's only 2 positions down from where he started now. That is a fine recovery from the reigning champion.
It really is, and I want to point out Ove right behind him. I know I'm a broken record with Trengrade here this race, but I really feel like this is a what-if opportunity. He's got the fastest lap of the race. He's been buried in traffic the entire time. What if Ove had qualified up front?
Yeah, what if indeed? If his qualifying had gone a little better, we might have been seeing him fighting with Claridge and Leno up the front. But as it stands, he'll have to be looking at the gearbox of Sebastian Tixier coming into the final couple of corners here as we enter the final lap of the race. Mick Claridge leading by 6 seconds over Mikko Leno. But the real battle, I think, is between Tixier and Trengrade. Look at them go into the first corner. Tixier defensive, but Trengrade goes for the outside. He'll late apex. It's turn 2 here, but a little bit of oversteer kills his run.
And not going to be close enough to send it up the inside of 3, and Tixier is going to try to send it up the inside of 3. Huge lockup and contact.
Ah, the battle is over. Big contact with Richard Watson there for Sebastian Tixier. Just went for the late move, and the left front locked up on the way in, and he just went straight into the number 16. Tixier gives the position back there and gets right back on the anchors for the hairpin. Well, that is 2 positions gained more for Ove Trengrade, up into 6th place, and he could potentially be looking at another move on Bill Tyler before the last lap is done. But we should turn our attention to the front of the field because it's only a couple more corners to go for Mick Claridge. It still seems like Trengrade is, he's trying to get past, but doesn't look like it's going to happen, at least into the last couple corners. Mick Claridge leading pretty much from start to finish here after Togo Hisada spun on lap 1, and he will take victory number who knows what in the Grand Prix Legends Series. Across the line, Mick Claridge wins. Mikko Leno coming through to P2 with John Olsen in 3rd place behind. Really good drive there from John.
Yeah, Antti Lepisto's going to hang on to 4th, and here's Ove, not going to get around Bill Tyler. Bill Tyler, top 5 finish.
Yeah, good stuff there from Bill Tyler. Trengrade having another look down the start-finish stretch, but he knew that was done. And a good old slide and spin on the way home. And, well, Sebastian Tixier will definitely be hoping for better from that one, won't he?
Yeah, and, knowing Sebastian, I think he was just having some fun out there. It's just unfortunate having that mistake come in contact with another competitor as well.
Big shame. Well, that's going to leave things done for the night as the last few drivers cross the line. We still have a few more drivers left to come. Timothy Porter is the last car on the lead lap right now, and he's got about 1/3 of a lap to go down into the hairpin. He's got a huge gap ahead to Andrew Eng. There will be no more positions gained for Timothy Porter, who's already 2 down from where he started. He was definitely caught in a lot of that mid to rear of field chaos.
Yeah, there was a lot of chaos throughout the entire race here today, but like you said, still a few more cars coming home and finishing under the bridge through the final set of corners and accelerate down the straightaway. And this has been a grueling race for a lot of people, a lot of attrition. Togo Hisada has been out, a lot of big spinners, including Tixier, just grabbed a lot of different people today.
Yeah, Motegi definitely chomped down on a lot of the Lotus 49 field today. We're going to step aside briefly here on the Global Sim Racing channel. When we come back, we're going to have our unofficial race results and interviews with our top 3. Well, another very chaotic and dramatic race in the Grand Prix Legends Series. Round 3 ultimately went to Mick Claridge, started second and led every lap from that point on. Mikko Leino finishes in second. Could have been a battle for victory were it not for accidentally grabbing first gear in the first corner. John Olsen will finish in third, completing the podium there. Very strong performance. Antti Lepisto is going to take fourth place. Bill Tyler rounding out the top 5. An excellent gain from Ove Trengerade, only qualified 20th but made it up to 6th by the end. Javier Sanchez is going to finish ahead of Laust Olsen. He's followed by Marco Salgado and Richard Watson to round out the top 10.
Then we got Sebastian Tixier coming home 11th place, down 6, and our former champion there probably was looking for a little bit of a better result. Matthew Maudsley 12th, Gary Ho 13th, Ben Zocco hanging out in 14th. Jason Clapper, our biggest mover today, up 17 positions, starting way back there in 32nd, finishing 15th. Glenn Becker 16th, Steve Morris, Bjorn Ackerman, Will Lamb, and Jeff Saunders rounding out the top 20.
Gary Quellen gained 2 spots to finish in 21st, and it's 5 spots gained for Terry Trommershauser, with Tobias Harnby making it 23rd place, followed by Jan Stefan and Kurt Clapper. Jonathan Jordan is going to take 26th place, gaining 5 spots from 31st, with Andrew Eng and Timothy Porter the last drivers to finish on the lead lap. Robert Reynolds and Robert Plumley a lap and 3 laps down respectively. Same for David Buell there. Unfortunately, our retirements list contains 4 cars. Mats Linden, David Rossi, our pole sitter Togo Hisada out only a few laps in, and Michael Grissinger retiring 19 laps from the end. He was one of the casualties of lap 1. We go to our race winner for driver interviews with Mick Claridge joining us in the commentary box very shortly, and this is going to be quite an excellent performance from you, Mick, tonight. It really came down to survival and keeping traction under the rear wheels.
Oh, cheers, Reece. Yeah, it's been really tough. These sessions we've been going into, and yeah, the practice session before was moderately high usage, so I was like panicking about that because I don't like that, that surface. And then we got to the race and it said extensive usage, and I thought, oh god. So it really was eggshell on the throttle, yeah, it was tough. I was trying to go for fastest lap for my own reasons, which a couple of guys know I'm trying to go for, but yeah, and I nearly wrecked it on the last couple of laps, so yeah, I thought I better just leave that alone. So yeah, good fun though.
Yeah, you did have quite a nice gap to play with at the end, which certainly helped. Did you feel some relief when you saw that Mikko Leino had spun behind you?
Yeah, and it was a shame about Togo, but yeah, I mean, coming out of turn 1 there, I don't know if it's turn 1 and turn 2 onto that straight that goes the opposite direction down the front straight, and I just thought, there's no way I'm going to give him an easy line into the left-hander. So I knew everyone's using the curb. There's like the blue and white curbs on the right-hand side as a brake marker. So I thought, if I can keep him away from that as much as I can, hopefully he hasn't run this line. And yeah, it looks like he overran his brake marker there. But yeah, it was a shame. It would have been a really close fight all race long with Togo. We were so close on pace. He kept getting me in qualifying. Like last race as well, he got me as well, bless him. And yeah, Mikko, great pace, man, from Mikko. That was brilliant. I don't think I've ever had a real battle with Mikko. Not on these sort of tracks. Maybe at Monza or Le Mans or whatever like that. Those places. But yeah, great to see him up there. Yeah, shame he spun. Yeah.
Yeah, well, either way, it's another win on the board for you in your long and successful history of competing in this series. We go to Laguna Seca next week. Back to elevation changes.
Yeah, man, I don't know what the weather's going to be like there. It really makes a difference in this car at the moment. It seems like, I know Joey will be able to tell you as well, like the tyres they got on the cars these days. Jesus, you just lose the back end once and that's it. They're melted, So all depends on the weather. If it's a nice early morning cold track, clean, that's what we want. Well, that's what I want anyway. But no, Laguna Seca, what can you say? Can't wait to throw the 49 round the corkscrew.
And we can't wait to see it either. Is there anyone you want to thank for your victory before we will let you go, Mick?
Yeah, there's a guy who's done a real lot for me in the last month or so, Malcolm Johnston. So hello to him and all the best, mate. And hope you're well. I know he's watching. So yeah, cheers, mate.
Hello, mate, and thank you very much to Mick Claridge for joining us for a driver interview. We also have Laust Olsen in there as well. Joey's going to have a chat to him about his fight up through the top 10.
Well, Laust, you finish 8th, which is up 4 positions, but I saw you up in 5th for a little while. Then I saw turn 3 bite you a couple times. What happened out there?
Yeah, it was... I got gifted a lot of places on the first lap. There was some people going off in front, and I also made a clean pass on Marco. So I was actually sitting nicely behind Bill and Antti, and later Bill. I think Bill got a slow down, so I managed to get past him, and that's when I was in 5th. And yeah, it's a difficult track to pass on, so I actually felt I had a good chance to keep on to that 5th place. But yeah, then turn 3 messed up the braking and ran right, and let both Bill and Richard by that time, and then came Seb and Ove, and it would have been good to have Bill and Richard as a buffer between me and those two, but nice fight with Seb, and again turn 3 bit me, so yeah, made some stupid mistakes, but probably finished where my speed would have placed me anyway, or perhaps a little further up still, so can't be too disappointed.
Well, talk to us a little bit about the brakes and this track in specific, because we saw some of the competitors really take advantage of the braking zones, but the cars didn't always look stable out there. How difficult was it to manage?
For me, if I didn't get if I brake too little or too hard, then I would overshoot the corner. So it was about getting just the right amount of brake pressure, and that could be quite difficult. And especially the downhill for after the back straight, that was quite difficult, and I chose to brake quite early there all the time, because I, in the previous race yesterday, had big difficulties getting the car stopped there. So it's quite easy to get it wrong and overshoot the corner, and that's when you lose a lot of places.
Well, Laus, you still come home with the top 10. Hopefully a few more positions up next week at Laguna Seca. And before I let you go, anybody you want to say hi to?
The community, the Lotus 49 community, it's a great bunch of racers. Nice, clean racing. You can really trust the people around you. So, of course, it's a difficult car, so mistakes happen. But generally, it's a good place to race. Nice, safe. Yeah.
Well, Laus, congrats on that 8th place. I'll see you in a little bit for Camel here, and see you next week at Laguna Seca.
Yeah, thanks. See you.
Yeah, pretty fantastic stuff there from our race winner, and from Laust Olsen as well. Yes, he was disappointed about some happenings there, but I still think a lot to be happy about. And that's going to wrap things up for tonight here, or this morning if you're in the US, for the Grand Prix Legends Series. A big thanks to the community for having us on to broadcast this epic official iRacing series. Thanks also to the team today, Robert, Joey, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our website, our social media, and our merch store. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. Next race, of course, is Laguna Seca. That's going to be on Saturday, April the 7th at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. We've also got upcoming races for other series listed on the screen. Check those out. Mark them down on your calendar. Up next, we've got double duty here on GSRC. We've got M-Tech starting at 11:45 Eastern and Camel GT at 1 p.m. So stay tuned for those. Until next time, though, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.